If you are of a certain age and grew up at Beth Am or a Reform synagogue someplace in this country, I'll bet you used to end Rosh Hashanah services with the hymn, "All the world shall come to serve thee. All the world shall come to serve thee and bless thy glorious name. And the righteousness triumphant the island shall acclaim. Yea, the people shall go seeking who knew thee not before, and the ends of earth shall praise thee and tell thy greatness o'er." How'd I do, Ross? All right. Appearing in that same Union prayer book too, the high holiday Machzor used by Reform synagogues across the country. All the world was the rousing anthem. In the King's English, that became a staple of classical Reform high holiday liturgy. Even as Reform synagogues moved away from classical Reform hymns and got rid of the organ, in many places, All the World remained an iconic, uplifting coda to Rosh Hashanah morning services. I'm told it was my grandfather, Jim Block's favorite, and not just because it marked the end of the service. He, like so many classical Reform Jews, likely liked the tune and the message, filled with pomp and triumph, perfect for an organ, in major key. There's almost a sense of joy and patriotism to the song. It dreams of a large, glorious future that we pray will come soon. As Dr. Wendy Zierler says, it imagines a coming together of all nations from every end and island of the earth to recognize and worship God as King, a kind of theological melting pot. With the coming of your victory, the hills shall shout with song, and the islands laugh exultant that they to God belong. And through all your congregations so loud your praise shall ring, that the utmost peoples hearing shall then your greatness sing. The song, a modern reflection of a Hebrew poem that dates back possibly as far as the 7th century, was perfect for the classical Reform Jews of the 19th and 20th century. The classical Reform rabbis insisted on a form of radical universalism, and all the world, grand and inclusive, spoke to this lofty vision of the world as it should be. The traditional placement of all the world falls in the Rosh Hashanah Musaf service and immediately precedes another prayer. Ata v'chartanu. Ata v'chartanu mikol ha'amim. It's got quite a different message than the sweeping human vision of all the world. Ata v'chartanu. You chose us from all the nations. You loved us and wanted us. You elevated us over all tongues and sanctified us with your commandments, and your great and holy name you proclaimed on us. On its most basic level, it's a particular vision of a God who chose the Jews. We at Beth Am do not say that prayer on these sacred days, but we do say others, many of which you are likely familiar with, that appear to contradict the ecumenical vision of all the world. Prayers that highlight our distinctiveness as a people over universality. Take our Shabbat Kiddush, our blessing over wine. Ki banu v'charta v'yotanu kidashta mikol ha'amim. God chose us and sanctified us from all the other nations. Or the Aleinu, shelo asanu kegoye haratzot, who did not make us like other nations in other lands. In these opening lines of the Aleinu, as the Jewish people, we are called upon to praise God as the sovereign and creator of all, because God assigned Jews a different kind of responsibility and destiny in the world. Right in the liturgy, a tension that has challenged us as a people for millennia, particular versus universal. For many of us, myself included, it's often easier to tack toward the universal, to highlight the bonds we share with the rest of humanity. We are uncomfortable with the passages within our tradition that set us apart from others, that define us as chosen, and seem to emphasize our tribalism and distinctiveness. Their messages seem myopic at best and chauvinistic at worst. The earliest Reformed Jews certainly didn't feel good about any separation between Judaism and other religions. Removing prayers and phrases from our liturgy that didn't fit this universal sentiment. We share the same common principles, values, and behaviors as our non-Jewish neighbors. But we are particular as well. Our Passover Haggadah retells our narrative. In each generation, we must see ourselves as being freed from Egypt. Hanukkah celebrates the miracle of Jewish might. Purim, Jewish survival in the face of long odds. Shavuot, the receiving of our people's most sacred book on Sinai. We celebrate the independence of Israel each spring and mourn the horrors that were committed against us during the Holocaust. Many of us are familiar with the phrase, Kol Yisrael Aravin ze bezeh. All Israel is responsible for one another. If we don't look at ourselves uniquely, nobody else will. This is what our history tells us. In the words of the writer Cynthia Ozick, if we blow into the narrow end of the shofar, we will be heard far. But if we choose to be mankind rather than Jewish and blow into the wider part, we will not be heard at all. And let's be honest, it's harder for us than our more traditional Jewish friends and family. We've lost some of the barriers that have helped emphasize our particularism. We generally do not follow strict dietary rules. We don't keep a traditional Shabbat. Few of us speak Hebrew. Our prayer times are more often meditation apps and yoga classes than engagement with the prayer book. We don't have the fences around our Jewish lives preventing it from escaping. If we are too universal and don't highlight our distinctiveness, we've lost what has helped maintain us as a people. I hope we haven't lost that sense of responsibility to other Jews. Especially with the rise of anti-Semitism in this country, we know we need to support one another. As a community, we've always found it important to support other Jews. This is the core to the Jewish American story. As new immigrants fled pogroms and persecution, we built Jewish settlement houses and free loan associations to aid Jews from Eastern Europe. We helped Jews who were persecuted in Ethiopia and Yemen find homes in Israel. We marched for Soviet Jewry. To paraphrase the great Israeli author Amos Oz, a Jew is someone who chooses to share the fate of other Jews or who is condemned to do so. Thankfully, here in California, being Jewish is a choice. And part of that choice must mean looking out for other Jews. I hope that we recognize the obligation that comes with being part of this sacred people. It's quite a blessing to live our lives obligated to the sacred call that brings us here on these high holy days, to care for and to continue to build the Jewish future. But we are universal Jews. We care for all, Jews and non-Jews alike. Our God cares for each of us. We are not better than other religions. We believe that we are caught up in a larger web of humanity and feel responsibility for all. Our heart aches whenever we see suffering. We are sensitive to the pain and the plight of all human beings. The yoke of responsibility is upon us simply because we are human. You likely know the story from Midrash Rabbi. Your rabbis have preached on it before. A man in a boat begins to drill a hole under his seat. His fellow passengers are alarmed and protest. "What are you doing?" The man replies, "Stay out of my business. What concerns are my actions to you? I, after all, am drilling the hole under my seat, not yours." The other passengers reply, "That is so, but when the water enters this boat and the boat sinks, we too shall drown." We felt this as a community more than ever in the last 18 months, as we grapple with individual liberties versus communal responsibility. I had this dream that we'd all be here today, filled in loud laughter and tears. And don't get me wrong, it's wonderful to see everyone, but this isn't how it should be. People coming in and slowly filling up our sanctuary, we'd hug and we'd sway. I dreamt we'd be together, packed here at Beth Am. I'd see confirmands and wedding couples, and those here to say Kaddish for the first time. New babies and old friends. And let's be honest, that should have been the reality. We should be celebrating this wonderful holiday, all of us together in person, not many of us or most of us on our screens. My dream lived the words of the psalmists. The cries and the darkness of the evening would yield the joy of the morning. And we did everything right. We wore masks and we washed our hands and we got our shots. We didn't travel or go to parties. Grandparents didn't see their grandchildren. We postponed weddings and bar mitzvahs. We chose to live in the world responsibly. But yet this virus persists and we cannot gather like we should for the high holidays. And it's a big deal not to be together. It's a big deal to continue to live our lives on screens and be distant and apart from family. It's a big deal to still have to make difficult choices about travel and schools and family. It's a big deal to still be apart on these holidays. It's a big deal because our sense of connectedness to this world is at stake. We are anxious and disappointed and on edge. I've heard from so many who continue to worry, how much of this can we take? And let's be clear. Unlike last year, there is blame to go around. This is a pandemic of choice. This is a pandemic of lack of responsibility. This is a pandemic of dishonesty. We could have avoided this. The reason our kids, my kids, are in the position that we are in today is because of the action of adults. Adults who decided to drill a hole on their side of the boat, not caring about who would sink. Adults who refused to get vaccinated. Adults who called masking tyrannical. Adults, many of whom are vaccinated, who continue to spout lies and mistruths about vaccines and diseases. Adults who see growth in the market as a panacea to our pandemic woes. Adults who sow division and chaos for personal gain and glory. Adults who, for a host of reasons, shirk their own communal responsibility, who are neither particular nor universal, but who thrive on narcissism and division. As this strange virus continues to spread and bring chaos and uncertainty to our country and world, I pray for all people, not just Jews who have been directly impacted by COVID. My heart breaks for all family members who have lost a loved one, all people who have had to say goodbye on a screen. I especially pray for those on the margins, who are often forgotten in our prayers and who too quickly are left behind to fend for themselves. If we are going to be universal, we need to be radically universal. That's what Rosh Hashanah is about. It's our most universal of holidays, the day where we do not observe a specific event in the Jewish calendar, but rather celebrate the birthday of the world, a time, as my teacher, Rabbi Larry Hoffman says, to celebrate God's rule over a marvelously diverse yet interconnected human family. Why does the Torah provide the story of Adam and Eve? The rabbis asked, why does the Torah provide the story of Adam and Eve? The answer, to teach us that all humanity is descended from a single set of parents. After all, the message all along on these holy days seems to be that our life's purpose is about bringing equality, justice, and the pursuit of self-knowledge into the world. These are such universal themes. Why not just embrace them? Rabbi Danny Zemmel cautions us, however, that while the Jewish instinct is universal, the Jewish method is particular. He writes, our human sense of caring dissipates the farther removed we are from the genuine experience of belonging to a something rather than an everything. The classic Peanuts cartoon underscores this point when Linus shouts, I love humanity, it's people I can't stand. Rabbi Zemmel continues, God created the whole universe and obliges us to care for it all, but we care for it all as Jews. It turns out there is not much of a tension between being universal and particular. Our particularism propels our universalism. The two ideas live in tandem and they grow together. We are better humans when we are in touch with our Judaism, and better Jews when we see the broader world. That's the message of these holy days. That's the call of the shofar. We hear the blast of our sacred symbol and use it to go out and build the world we aspire to live in. Back to the Aleinu. We chant it at the end of every single service. It's the start of the prayer. If the start of the prayer highlights our distinctiveness, the end casts a broad and beautiful vision of the world perfected. The prayer actually contains the root of a phrase that many of us know and aspire to, the melding of the particular and universal. Tikkun olam. Litaken olam b'malchut Shaddai. This is who we are as Jews. This is our calling. Please join us as we sing the words, all the world shall come to serve you. There'll be a slide up for you watching at home, and the adapted version of the prayer is on page 201.
All the world shall come to serve you and bless your glorious name, and your righteousness triumphant the island shall proclaim, and the people shall go seeking who knew you not before, and the ends of earth shall praise you and tell your greatness o'er. They shall build for you their altars, their idols overthrown, and their graven God shall shame them as they turn to you alone. They shall worship you at sunrise and feel your kingdom's might.